Good morning, guys, and thank you for joining me. It's been a couple days since I've posted. I haven't been feeling too well, but let's dive right into the morning digest, and I want to start out by talking about this shutdown. A lot of people think that this shutdown has everything to do with the border and border security, and that's all just a giant ruse, my friends. If you fell onto the line of thinking that's what was really going on, I don't blame you, because it was kept behind the scenes pretty well, and it even took me a little bit to figure out what was going on here. Now, what a lot of people are failing to realize is the government has never been shut down for 22 business days or 30 days at all. The longest government shutdown was 21 days. I believe that was under George H.W. Bush. And if you're contracted by the government to work, there's protocol for what happens when you go into a furlough situation and there's a government shutdown. Now, there's contracts drawn out, and what happens is the first 22 days are covered by one segment of these contracts, and that basically states if you're called back to work or if you've been working through the shutdown, you're given back all of the pay that you have earned if you've been working, and then you go back to doing your job as normal. If you haven't been working, you don't get paid. Well, what I believe Donald Trump is actually doing is using this government shutdown as a means to clean out the swamp. And this is why you don't see him just declaring a national emergency about the border and building the wall and reinstituting the government. Now, this is what we've been waiting to happen for all along, and now that it's here, we have a whole bunch of people whining and bitching about it. Well, wake up and smell the coffee and realize this is what you've been asking for. You just don't realize it. So what's going on is once the government shuts down for 30 days or 22 business days, the federal government, the executive branch, now has the opportunity to institute a RIF, which is a reinstitution of forces, which basically means if Donald Trump really wanted to, he could use his powers to strip all these non-essential workers of their job titles and basically destroy the government bureaucracy from the inside out. And I think that has a lot to do with what's going on right now. Think about this for a minute, right? What does Donald Trump gain from shutting down the government for $5 billion? Absolutely nothing, especially considering he knows Chuck and Nancy hold the key to him getting this money and hold the key for how he will look after all is said and done. Now, Donald Trump is not going to give the power to the Democrats when it comes to choosing how he's shown to the entire country. So, in other words, he's not going to go into a government shutdown without knowing that he's getting out of it smelling pretty. In other words, there has to be something going on in the background that's going to make him look good if he decides he has to declare a national emergency to build this wall. If you think for a second that things are going to come back online exactly how they have been for the last 2 decades as far as bureaucracy is concerned after the shutdown, you are sadly mistaken. They're going to use this opportunity to clean out the swamp. Not only that, you have to realize they've now had 30 days come Sunday, 30 days of very little obstruction going on behind the scenes. You have to realize a lot of these people that have been furloughed are people that are definitely working in a process to work against Donald Trump's goals and the goals he was mandated to institute as the elected president of the United States. So, I think the big scheme here is these people being gone and not being able to obstruct, while at the same time the means to get rid of them altogether has been delivered. Now, we also have to start thinking on a grander scale than just one thing going on behind the scenes, because we all know that it's never just one thing going on. There's been a lot of word about military tribunals happening in the background here, and I'm going to start leaning towards the fact that, yeah, I think there's military tribunals happening in the background. We have multiple sources talking about they know who's prosecuting these, and on top of that, we had 2 whistleblowers come out in front of Congress and drop the bombshell that there's a prosecutor named Durham out there who's engaged in military tribunals and secret grand juries right now. We also have to realize in the last week of news, there has been the leaks of 3 secret grand juries meeting and hearing information about certain things. Now, these certain things, we know for a fact, do not tie in to the collusion supplemental story given out by Robert Mueller and all of that. These grand juries aren't convened for that because Congressman Jordan specifically asked, is that what this is about? And he was told over and over again in several different iterations, no, this is not Huber, this is Durham, and it has nothing to do with Russia collusion, and I cannot talk to you about it because there's federal cases from the DOJ, there's open investigations into all of this stuff. Now, at the same time, we have the Democrats going down to Puerto Rico and chillaxing while the government is shut down. What's interesting about Puerto Rico is they do not recognize sex trafficking as a crime in Puerto Rico. Do you find it coincidental that we have a whole bunch of people hanging out in a place that more or less grants them amnesty from all of their crimes? And on top of that, if there are military tribunals going on right now, what better time to do it than when the government is shut down? Think about this for a second. If there's a whole bunch of people being detained that work inside of our government, that work for Congress, whether they be staffers, congressmen, congresswomen, there's a bunch of people tied in there. You have to come to realize that these people would be noticed missing if they were functioning in their government positions during all of this, right? So with the government being shut down right now, there's a very good possibility that there's a bunch of players that would normally be visible in the public eye, right, that are no longer visible because of the shutdown and aren't doing their jobs, which gives them all the time in the world to be prosecuted behind the scenes. And then we have Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Very well could be dead as we speak. However, I don't think there's any coming back for her. And there's no coincidence that all of this is happening at the same time that we have the head of the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank. He just stepped down. Now, he stepped down 3 years early, and on top of that, he was appointed by Obama. Now, his entire time inside of the World Bank as the leader of the World Bank has been giving China the keys to run the economic world. He got them introduced into the basket of funds for the International Monetary Fund, etc., etc. He was giving China all the power on the economic stage while at the same time allowing the United States to hang themselves with deals like the TTP and the TTIP and NAFTA, etc., etc. Well, there's no coincidence that this World Bank leader just got replaced, right? The president of the World Bank just got replaced. Well, he got replaced, and at the same time, we have the yellow vests in France running their banks. This isn't being reported on, but the yellow vests have organized a run on the banks, and a whole bunch of banks, ATMs, financial funds, institutions, etc. have been shut down in France. And this is very, 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 very important to realize. What we're witnessing right now is a global reset, and everything is happening at the same time. You have the government shutting down right now. Trump is appointing a new head to the World Bank, okay? Ruth Bader Ginsburg is going to be gone, which means he's getting another Supreme Court appointment, right? And I think he's insulating himself from all of the backfire and backdraft that's going to be coming from all of these things happening simultaneously. So when Ruth Bader Ginsburg kicks the bucket, that paves the way for another conservative judge to come on the courts. Now, I honestly think that we would need to have this kind of security on the Supreme Court in case somebody turns coat, just for safe measure, before we can even consider going after the Federal Reserve. But we also have to ask ourselves, why is all of this happening right when tax season comes around as well, and we're facing a reset? We're looking at it right in the eyes, and there's no way around it. So by having the government shut down, does it take away attention from everything that's going on? And the answer to that question is yes. Now, how far are they planning on taking this solution that they inevitably have to come up with in order to fix the Fed. Are our taxes this year going to be recognized? Think about this for a minute. I'm being dead serious. If everything resets, would it not be a perfect situation in order to make that all happen quietly and without much resistance? The only way to do that is to shut down the bureaucracy. And that's what's happening, my friends. That is what's happening. I would not be surprised to see a good 80 to 85% of these furloughed employees not get their jobs back. And it just makes sense. There's no reason why we should be funding all of these jobs with our tax money when we can be putting it to better use. Especially knowing that our economy is hanging on by a string right now, and knowing that the reset is inevitable. What is the sense in having a reset even happen if all of these people that work for the government are just going to leech off of the brand new system? No, you have to get rid of the bureaucracy too, and that's what's going on, guys. So, when it comes to Ruth Bader Ginsburg, we are literally getting a communist off of the Supreme Court, and inevitably, we have no other choice but to put somebody into that institution who does not back the Fed, who does not back the bureaucracy, and is a true constitutionalist. There's a few names floating out there, but I honestly think that Ginsburg is the key to a lot more than most people realize, and there's no coincidence that she happens to get sick at the same time that this president of the World Bank decides to step down. At the same time, the government decides to shut down, all while there's rumors of military tribunals going into effect. And if you think for a minute that executive order that came into effect on the 1st isn't being used, you're out of your mind, my friends. There's people being prosecuted right now, and the mainstream media has been given just enough rope to hang themselves. And you have to realize that even they are starting to eat their own as far as occasional Cortez there. They keep letting her bury herself, but she's not making the Democrat Party look any better. And you have to wonder if all of this is a giant scheme, because there's definitely Democrats that are working against their own system right now. When you have Democrats coming out saying Trump has every right to build the border wall based on an emergency, things aren't going the way the Democrats want within their own party. So I thank you guys for bearing with me with the last couple of days of me not making videos. This one may be short and to the point, but this is just what's going on in my mind, and I don't want to sit here and drag it out. So God bless, have a good day, take care of yourselves. Looking forward to talking to you later.